Hello there, in this video we'll be taking a look at the current state of the Senate races. A lot has changed since my last video. Here's where we were in mid-August. Let's clear the map, keeping the safe states where they are. Let's start in New Hampshire. Incumbent Democrat Maggie Hassan is facing Don Bolduc. Bolduc was the far-right candidate, but we saw him immediately walk back his claims in the 2020 election being stolen. This was clearly a move to get more moderate Republicans on board with his campaign. All the latest polls show Hassan ahead by anywhere from 3 to 13 points. Hassan also has a massive fundraising edge, and lots has been spent opposing both candidates. I still have New Hampshire lean Democrat, as Hassan is the incumbent candidate with a huge fundraising edge and a decent lead in the polls. Moving to Pennsylvania, we have a race that has tightened significantly. In mid-August, Fetterman had a double-digit lead in the polls. Now recent polls from quality pollsters show Fetterman only up by about 2 to 6 points. It's tough to assess campaign finance, as Open Secrets doesn't have a Q3 report from the Fetterman campaign. However, it's likely Fetterman has a slight fundraising edge, but tens of millions of dollars in outside spending have dominated this race. Fetterman is also getting some negative press, with local media outlets calling on him to release his medical records following his stroke. But Oz has his own negative press to deal with. It's a bit more serious. Oz allegedly conducted experiments that killed hundreds of dogs and more than 24 pigs. Oz may also be negatively impacted by Doug Mastriano. We've seen some Pennsylvania lawmakers endorse Oz while refusing to endorse Mastriano. Right now, I have Pennsylvania lean Democrat, but Oz is definitely trending in the right direction. In North Carolina, Republican Ted Budd and Democrat Sherry Beasley are essentially tied in the polls. The latest poll, conducted by Survey USA, has Budd +1. Beasley has the fundraising edge, but outside spending massively favors Budd. North Carolina has been trending Republican, and even in a neutral environment, I do think Budd is the slight favorite. I still have North Carolina lean Republican. In Georgia, the race has been shaken up following the bombshell report that Herschel Walker paid for a girlfriend's abortion, but Senate Republicans are still rallying behind Walker. The typical voter has a pretty short memory, so I'm not convinced this story will impact Walker all that much. The latest polls, all of which were conducted by reputable pollsters, show Warnock ahead by a decent margin. Warnock also has a massive fundraising edge, but outside spending is roughly even. There's nothing to suggest that Warnock isn't the favorite right now, and I have Georgia lean Democrat as a result. In Florida, incumbent Republican Marco Rubio holds a steady lead in the polls, with reputable pollsters showing him up by about 6 or 7 points. Rubio has been outspent, but still has more cash on hand for the home stretch. I'm upgrading Florida to likely Republican, as Rubio has a clear edge in a state that's been trending Republican. Let's move north to Kentucky. In August, I had this likely Republican, as we didn't have any polls. We still don't really have any polls, but Rand Paul does have the massive fundraising edge. 538 currently gives Paul a 99% chance to win, and as much as I'd like to see Booker pull off an upset, Rand Paul is going to win this race. I'm upgrading it to safe Republican. I also just noticed Indiana is blank. That state I had safe in mid-August. That is still safe. But let's talk about Ohio, where Democrat Tim Ryan has actually taken a narrow lead in the polls. However, several polls do show Vance with a narrow lead as well. Ryan has a big fundraising edge, while outside spending heavily favors Vance. They have an upcoming debate, and it'll be interesting to see how much it impacts the race. I really don't know how many voters are going to tune in to a Senate debate, though. In mid-August, I was a bit more bearish on Vance and others, rating this race lean Republican, and I still have it lean Republican. The state is still trending towards the GOP, and I think Vance can overcome a narrow polling deficit if the political environment remains neutral. Moving over to Wisconsin, where incumbent Republican Ron Johnson has built a narrow polling lead over Democrat Mandela Barnes, there's been about a 6-point swing in Johnson's favor over the past month. Outside spending has gone heavily negative against Barnes, while Johnson holds a fundraising edge. If the election was today, I think Johnson would win by about 5 points, and I still have Wisconsin lean Republican. Iowa is a state that I had likely Republican in mid-August. The polls were a bit closer back then, but the two latest polls have Grassley up double digits. Even Franken's own internals have Grassley up. Iowa has been trending towards the Republicans since Obama won it in 2012. I'm upgrading Iowa to safe Republican. Missouri was another state I had likely Republican back in mid-August. The two latest polls have Schmidt up by double digits. Schmidt has a fundraising edge and lots of money behind him in outside spending. I'm also upgrading Missouri to safe Republican. On the flip side of likely victories, let's talk about Colorado. I had it likely Democrat in mid-August, but the latest polls show Bennett up by about 6 to 11 points. Bennett also has a strong fundraising edge, and outside spending is in his favor too. Bennett is a strong incumbent in a state trending towards the Democrat, so I'm upgrading this race to safe Democrat. Utah is a tricky race because incumbent Republican Mike Lee faces independent Evan McMullin, who has been endorsed by the state Democratic Party. We're short on reliable polls, but they all show Lee with a lead. Lee has a fundraising edge, and a lot of money has been spent opposing McMullin. I'm keeping this race as likely Republican for now, but it's tough to predict a scenario where Lee loses. It would be a huge upset. Moving down to Arizona, incumbent Democrat Mark Kelly has about a 5-point aggregate lead over Blake Masters, though the race has been tightening over the past several weeks. Kelly holds a significant fundraising edge, while more than $60 million in outside spending has supported and opposed both candidates. The two candidates recently held a debate, and it's unclear what impact that'll have on the race. GOP outside spending has been non-committal in this race. It seems like every couple of weeks, major Republican super PACs are pulling ad buys or committing more money to this race. But when you put it all together, I still think Arizona leans towards Kelly, the incumbent with a polling and fundraising edge. Finishing up with Nevada, the latest polls show a close race, though most polls have Republican Adam Laxalt up narrowly. Cortez Masto has a big fundraising edge, while outside spending has been heavy against both candidates. And more money is on the way. According to NBC News, a GOP group is about to make the single largest investment in Hispanic media in the race by any Republican group. This race is a true toss-up. 538 says it's a 50-50 race. I don't like leaving blank spots on the map, and I'm actually going to flip Arizona to lean Republican, though this race is definitely one to watch down the home stretch. So as of now, I'm predicting a 50-50 Senate. Make sure to subscribe to this channel, as I'll be putting out a final Senate prediction right before the election, and leave a comment down below. Who do you think is going to win the Senate? Thanks for watching.